It's still dark outside. The alarm goes off before 5 in the morning. Most of the houses on the street are completely quiet. No garage doors opening. No kids getting ready for school. No emails. No traffic building in the distance. Someone gets out of bed, pulls on a riding jacket, grabs a helmet, and quietly closes the front door. Maybe they even roll the motorcycle a few feet down the driveway before starting it, just to avoid waking anyone up. Then the engine comes to life. And for the next few hours, something unusual happens. Nobody needs anything from them. No coworker is asking for an update. No family member is calling from another room. No notification is demanding a response. There's nowhere they urgently have to be. Just a motorcycle, an empty road, and the faintest hint of sunrise somewhere ahead. From the outside, the explanation seems obvious. They love motorcycles. Maybe they like empty roads. Maybe they enjoy the cold morning air. Maybe they're disciplined enough to wake up while everyone else is sleeping. And all of that can be true. But there's something interesting about the way some riders describe these early morning rides. Some say it's when they can finally think. Others say almost the exact opposite. They ride because it's the only time they can finally stop thinking. And that difference reveals something much deeper than a preference for motorcycles. Because maybe the real attraction isn't only the road, well, maybe it's what disappears when the engine starts. Before sunrise, the world is psychologically different. Think about a road you normally drive at 5:30 in the afternoon. Cars everywhere, brake lights, people changing lanes, phones buzzing, someone riding your bumper, a meeting you're already thinking about, dinner plans, a message you haven't answered. Now imagine that same road at 5:30 in the morning, almost empty. The pavement hasn't changed, but your mind has. There are fewer things competing for your attention. And that matters because your brain has limited bandwidth. Every notification, decision, conversation, obligation, and small interruption takes up some of it. Most of these things seem insignificant individually. Together they create noise. But on a motorcycle before dawn, that noise can suddenly narrow. There's the road, your speed, the temperature, the curve ahead, the position of the bike, the distance between you and the next vehicle. And because riding requires real attention, there may be less room for certain abstract worries to dominate your mind. You can't give 100% of your attention to yesterday's argument while also judging the line through a curve. You can't completely disappear into next month's financial problem while your body is responding to the road beneath you. The problem hasn't vanished. Your attention has simply moved, and sometimes that shift can feel like relief. Not because motorcycles are therapy, and not because riding magically solves anything, but because activities that demand immediate feedback can temporarily pull us away from problems that have no immediate solution. You stop wrestling with questions like, what if this happens next month? And start responding to something much simpler. What is happening right now? But concentration is only part of the appeal. There's another psychological ingredient hiding in that early morning ride. Control. Not control over everything. Actually, almost the opposite. Control over a few clear things. You decide when to leave. You decide which road to take. You decide where to stop for coffee. You decide whether to turn left or right at the next intersection. You decide when you've had enough and when you want to keep going. Those choices sound almost trivial until you compare them with the rest of someone's week. Imagine spending 5 days living according to other people's calendars. Your boss decides when the meeting starts. Clients decide when a problem becomes urgent. Your family needs certain things at certain times. Bills arrive when they arrive. Traffic decides how long the commute takes. Your phone gives everyone a way to reach you almost instantly. Then Saturday morning arrives. It's 5:07. Nobody is awake. And for once, choosing between two roads feels surprisingly important. Psychologists sometimes talk about a sense of agency, the feeling that your actions are actually directing part of your experience. In ordinary language, it's the difference between feeling like you're living your day and feeling like your day is happening to you. An early ride can create a temporary world where cause and effect feel unusually clear. You steer. The bike responds. You brake. The bike slows. You choose a road. That road becomes your morning. But this is where the story gets more complicated, because it would be easy to hear all of this and assume that anyone who craves those rides must feel trapped or overwhelmed in everyday life. That isn't necessarily true. Some people simply love independence. They enjoy being alone without feeling lonely. They like activities where improvement can be felt directly. A rider learns to handle corners more smoothly, plans better routes, understands the machine more deeply, gets better at dealing with cold, wind, distance, fatigue. Nobody has to applaud. Nobody even has to know. The satisfaction comes from knowing, I can do this. That sense of competence can be deeply rewarding on its own. For one person, the 5 a.m. ride may genuinely be about moving towards something they love. But another rider can perform exactly the same ritual for a very different reason. And the difference becomes visible when you ask one question. What happens when they can't go? Because there is a difference between enjoying solitude and needing to become unreachable before you can relax. There is a difference between loving an empty road and feeling that the empty road is the only place nobody can ask anything from you. Pay attention to when the urge becomes strongest. Does the rider want to go out even after a peaceful week? Or does the need to disappear become almost urgent after conflict, deadlines, family tension, or constant demands? Same motorcycle, same road, same sunrise. Different psychological function. For one person, the ride expands an already satisfying life. For another, it may provide temporary distance from a life that feels too crowded. And those two things can coexist. You can genuinely love motorcycles and also use riding to regulate stress. You can value independence and also notice that being unavailable feels unusually comforting. Human motives rarely fit into clean categories. And this becomes even more interesting when a hobby starts becoming part of identity. During the week, someone might primarily experience themselves as an employee, a manager, a parent, a spouse, the person who fixes things, the person people call when something goes wrong. Every identity carries expectations, but on that road before sunrise, many of those roles temporarily disappear. Nobody knows your job title inside your helmet. The curve doesn't care how much money you make. The road doesn't know whether you answer that email. For a few hours, identity becomes simpler. You are the person operating the machine, making decisions, responding to consequences, moving forward. That may explain why giving up certain hobbies can feel strangely painful. You aren't just losing an activity. You may be losing access to a version of yourself, the competent version, the independent version, the quiet version, the version that doesn't need permission. And this is where the motorcycle stops being the most important part of the story. Because almost everyone has some version of this. Maybe you drive alone at night. Maybe you run before sunrise. Maybe you stay awake after everyone in the house goes to sleep. Maybe you take long walks without your phone. Maybe you sit in your car for 10 minutes after arriving home. Small rituals where temporarily nobody can demand a performance from you. So the more useful question isn't, is this healthy or unhealthy? It's something more uncomfortable. Are you going towards something you love, or are you mostly trying to get away from something you can't tolerate? If you came back from that ride, walk, drive, or quiet hour feeling energized because you experienced something meaningful, that tells you one thing. If you mostly feel relieved because nobody could reach you for a while, that tells you something else. Neither answer automatically means there's a problem. But the contrast is worth noticing. The next time you feel that urge to disappear into your own ritual, pay attention to what happened before it. Not to judge yourself. Just to understand the pattern, because sometimes what we call freedom reveals exactly where we feel least free. So, tomorrow morning, somewhere before sunrise, another garage door will quietly open. Another helmet will go on. Another engine will start while the neighborhood sleeps. And from the outside, it will still look like someone who simply loves motorcycles. Maybe they do. But the road may be giving them something even more valuable than speed, scenery, or adventure. For a few hours, it may give them access to a version of themselves that belongs entirely to them. And perhaps the most revealing question isn't why they leave before everyone wakes up. It's who they finally get to become when, for a little while, nobody is asking them to be anything else. If you recognize yourself or someone you know in this, tell me in the comments what your version of that empty road is, and subscribe for more explorations of the psychology hiding inside ordinary habits.